It just felt like everything stood still for a really long time. And then eventually when that out call did come, I get kind of fired up. I turn around and I see my third baseman just sprinting at me to come pick me up. And then everybody was on top of me after. It was very cool.
Welcome to episode 325 of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. I'm Joe McFarland. While the snow is falling here in Alberta, it seems spring might just be around the corner. At least that's what the weatherman says heading into the weekend. We can only hope, of course. Until then, though, let's get into the news from the past week, and we'll start things off in college baseball because a couple of big-time performances really highlighted this week, one in the CCBC and one south of the border. We'll start in the CC, where Matthew Ridsdale threw the first no-hitter in Edmonton Collegiate Hawks history on Sunday. He walked 4 and struck out 5 in the 7-inning 11-0 victory over TRU. Ridsdale had been coming off a complete Game 3 hitter against UFV the previous week, earning Pitcher of the Week honors. He's now 2-0 with an ERA of 0 on the season. It was the Hawks' lone win in their 4-game set with the Wolfpack. They're now 2-6 on the campaign. We'll hear from Ridsdale in just a few minutes. Elsewhere in the CC, Prairie Baseball Academy earned a split with Okanagan College over the weekend. They're now 4-4 on the season. The University of Calgary Dinos, meantime, had the weekend off and are still at 2-2. This weekend, PBA is home to Victoria, while the Hawks and Dinos have a home-and-home series. Hopefully, as mentioned, the snow gets all melted by then. Over to the U.S. college ranks, and how about Saskatoon's Corey Waters? He highlights our weekly top performances list after going 6 for 6 with 2 homers, 8 RBI, and he hit for the cycle in McCook's 23-22 win over Colby Community College. Yeah, that sounds like a football score, doesn't it? He's hitting .381 on the season with 11 home runs and 41 RBI in 30 games. As for the rest of our list this week, Dawgs Academy product Nash Crowell continues to be a force at the plate for Reinhardt University. He had a 2-homer game against Indiana Southeast on Saturday. He now has 12 round trippers on the season. He's also hitting .400 with 39 RBI in 33 games. Dawgs teammate Logan Grant's streak of 5 straight games with a homer came to an end last week, but he did get another one on Tuesday in Bellevue's big win over Valley City State. He's now sporting a line of .351 with 12 homers and 35 RBI in 30 games. And one more dog, Jimmy Dion, had himself a day on Saturday with a 2-homer game for Howard College. He now has a .363 average with 12 dingers and 50 RBI in 32 games. Red Deer's Gavin Galenza is on an absolute tear with Colby Community College. He now has hits in 21 straight games. Now, he did miss 6 games in the middle of that stretch, but all in all, he's hitting .427 on the season with 3 homers and 15 RBI in 22 games. And Vauxhall Academy grad Garrett Smith has strung together a pair of quality starts for Siena Heights University. The right-hander wins 6+ on Saturday against Michigan Dearborn, allowing 2 runs on 6 hits and 5 walks while striking out 7 in a 4-3 victory. That comes after a 7-inning outing where he allowed just 1 run on 5 hits and 1 walk while striking out 8 in a 7-1 victory over Trine. He's now 2-1 in 6 appearances this season. Over to Baseball Canada, where they've announced the junior national team's extended spring training camp roster. It includes Albertans Easton Katura and Ty Thierman, as well as Alberta-trained products William Labonte, Max Poirier, and Tim Piazantine. That Florida trip features dates against the Blue Jays, Pirates, Phillies, and Yankees complex teams. Baseball Alberta has unveiled dates for its upcoming girls' identification camps as they start the process of naming their provincial team rosters. The dates will be April 6th in Fort McMurray, April 13th in Spruce Grove, and April 19th in Calgary. Go to baseballalberta.com for all the details. And finally, registrations are underway for the 4th annual Mitch Ball Memorial Baseball Tournament in Lethbridge. That one is set for May 23rd through 25th at Canola Harvest Field and Dave Elton Park. Check in with the Lethbridge Bulls and Prairie Baseball Academy socials for more. Let's turn our attention now to the pros, where the MLB and Triple-A schedules are underway, while the rest of minor league baseball will get going this coming weekend. We'll start with some news out of the bigs. In Calgary's Michael Soroka made his first start of the season with the Washington Nationals Monday against the Toronto Blue Jays, and he went 5 innings, allowing 4 runs on 5 hits with a walk and 3 strikeouts. The more concerning piece, though, was when he left the game in the 6th with his trainers. Manager Davey Johnson did say it was a biceps cramp, and it sounds like Soroka will be making his next scheduled start. Meantime, Edmonton's Eric Sabrowski continues to work his way back up after being sidelined sidelined with left elbow inflammation during spring training. The latest on him is that he'll return to mound activity over the next couple of weeks. Down to Triple-A now, and a couple of really strong performances to highlight this week, starting with Dawgs product Matt Lloyd. He picked up his first hit at that level on Sunday with a triple and followed that up on Tuesday with a 3-for-4 night with a double and 4 RBI in a 13-7 Memphis win over Buffalo. Speaking of those Bisons, Damiano Palmigiani picked up his first hit of the season in that same game, adding an RBI and a run scored. As mentioned, the rest of minor league baseball gets going this weekend. We're learning more about some of the assignments for Alberta's players, and I won't be listing them all here because, frankly, there's a lot of them. Now, we are working on a new story that we'll be releasing in the coming days, showcasing where everyone has landed. Among the highlights, though, Innisfail's Nathan Flewelling will start with Tampa Bay's single-A team, the Charleston River Dogs. He'll be joined there by Jack Lyons of Okotoks. Fellow Dogs Eric Hartman and Mason Guerra will start their seasons with Atlanta's single-A team, the Augusta Green Jackets. Bigger Saskatchewan and Vauxhall Academy grad Garrett Hawkins is making his comeback from Tommy John surgery. He's landed in San Diego's High A affiliate, the Fort Wayne Tin Caps. And Matt Tugboat Wilkinson will be back with Cleveland's High A squad, the Lake County Captains, to start the season, and he has been named their opening day starter. Congratulations to Tug. That was a lot of news, so it's time to hear from someone other than me right now, and we'll start things off with the aforementioned Matthew Ridsdale. The Edmonton Collegiate Hawks hurler had a great first week and somehow had an even better week too, with the first no-hitter in franchise history. Head coach Jake Lanferman told me he's very proud of Ridsdale's early success and how much he's worked over the years to get to this point to become a master of his craft. We'll have a full story on the no-no in the days ahead, but first, here's our catch-up with Ridsdale after the team arrived home from their road trip to Kamloops. Matt, thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
First no-hitter in Edmonton Collegiate Hawks history, Matthew Ridsdale. How does that sound now that you've had a few days to reflect on what's been probably a busy last few days here?
Geez, it's honestly pretty surreal. You know, I'd never thrown a no-hitter, even in my Little League career, going up through it. The fact that it's the first in program history it's really wild. You know, on the day, it just felt like any other outing, and then suddenly there's all this fanfare.
I was going to ask about that. Take us back to even before the game. Like, did you feel anything different going into it as you're about to throw on Sunday?
So I was about 50-50 because I hadn't actually thrown at all since Wednesday that week. I'd been busy with a lot of stuff. So I was thinking it's either my arm is going to feel really good and I'm going to throw especially well, or it's going to break down on me in the third or fourth inning and I'm going to lose steam. So luckily it wasn't that.
Absolutely. As those innings start to march on, were you feeling good about things? Did you know kind of what was at stake as those innings were going on? Or were you just like, you know, just one batter at a time and don't worry about that scoreboard at the end of the day?
So that's what I was trying to tell myself. And I think most pitchers will say, you know, I ignore the scoreboard. I don't pay attention to that. I just go and pitch. But I was pretty locked in on the fact that there weren't any hits up there, probably starting in the fourth or fifth inning. And I was definitely trying to preserve that, which maybe not be the smartest thing to do, but
superstitions be darned, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So as that's all going on, were your teammates avoiding you? Because I know it's like hush, hush, right? Like it's like shut out in hockey. You don't talk about that kind of thing. Were they keeping away from you, or were they being pretty jovial and excited and chatting with you like a normal business day?
So they were coming up and chatting and being, for the most part, normal, like it was a normal day, but nobody mentioned what was going on the scoreboard. Nobody would ever say anything about that.
Looking back on it, what was working for you? Were you working in a different mix? Did you have a good pitch that was working? Like, what was it that set that one apart from what's been you've had some pretty good outings, but this one was pretty exceptional.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for me that day in particular, I'd say my biggest strength was fastball command. I felt like I was throwing the fastball pretty much right where I wanted it very consistently all day and just setting myself up for any off-speed pitches I'd want to throw to finish off an at-bat.
Mm-hmm. You didn't have a ton of strikeouts at the end of the day, which meant the defense had to do a little bit of their job as well. Any moments that stand out to you where you're like, oh, thank goodness you were right there in that moment, or any plays that really stand out to you as far as like preserving that big no-no?
Yes. So there was one in the sixth inning in particular, because, you know, obviously I was thinking about that it could happen. It was getting close to the end. and somebody hit a really firm low line drive towards first base, and my first baseman made a really nice, like, kind of sliding catch to preserve that. And it was really at that point I was like, okay, I need to finish it off, like, for him now, for my defense, because they've done so much good work.
Absolutely. So you get into that seventh and looking at the score sheet and watching the game back, you got 2 outs really quickly, and then you end up getting a couple of walks and a ground out to end it. How dicey or how much were you sweating, especially as you get those 2 guys on board?
Oh, a lot. It was geez, after I got that second out, I was just in my head like, I need to end this no-hitter on a strikeout, and I was just trying to strike out the batter as much as physically possible. And then, that led to the 2 walks, trying to be too fine. And it was after that I just went back to it, like, no, I'm just gonna go back to throwing how I was, and hopefully he keeps getting himself out like they have been.
And sure enough, they did. A ground out ends the ball game. Do you remember the moment when kind of pandemonium ensues? Because I'm pretty sure everybody knew what was on the line with that last out.
Yeah. So it was really weird. I felt like time almost stood still for a second right after the play was made, like after I saw the play get made, but before the umpire made the out call. And it just felt like everything stood still for a really long time. And then eventually when that out call did come, I get kind of fired up. I turn around and I see my third baseman just sprinting at me to come pick me up. And then everybody was on top of me after. It was very cool.
How surreal is that to think back on it? Because in the moment, you're probably just all jacked up on adrenaline, right? To be able to like look back on it a couple of days later, like that had to have been something else.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I've never had any experience like that before. Just an entire 35, 40 guys grabbing me and shoving me around and just jumping all over the place, screaming. It was insane.
Who's the first person you call?
First person I call? That would be my girlfriend.
That's a pretty safe call, I gotta say. How was the phone though? Like, did you have to plug it in pretty quickly? Because I'd imagine the texts and calls and social media mentions were probably off the chains after a couple of hours.
Oh yeah, it was the Snapchat and the Instagram were blowing up very quickly afterwards, and I just decided on the bus at that point that I was going to put my phone down and take a nap, because we were going to be losing service going through the mountains, and I didn't want to deal with it that right then. I was tired.
It's probably the best case scenario in that moment too. It's just like, you know what, we're going through the mountains, especially that Revelstoke area. There's not a lot that you can really do at that particular point, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, I mean, it's one thing to have a no-hitter in the midst of, an okay season, but you're coming off a pitcher of the week, right? Like you had a pretty good first start as well. How do you top the last couple of weeks, or how do you at least keep things rolling over the next little bit here to make sure that you're giving your team a chance to win?
Yes, I guess I don't think I can try to top, frankly, either of my 2 first appearances. So the goal is just going to be really just try to prepare the same way that I have been and do the same exact things that I've been doing and see how consistent I can get. Maybe eventually get into a game that goes longer than 7 innings, so I can get the longevity up, I guess, if I can top something.
For sure. That's a pretty good goal indeed. Let's get in your baseball past here a little bit, Matt. You were originally from Brampton, Ontario. How did you get into baseball in the first place?
So I moved to Cincinnati, Ohio when I was 2-3 years old. So I started playing baseball there. It was huge in Ohio. Mm-hmm. So I was playing T-ball at 4 years old or so, and I never put it down since.
Very cool. Was it all baseball all the time when you were a kid, or did you have other sports that you liked?
I was always a multi-sport athlete. I've always really liked golf and basketball are kind of my main other two, but I like to just play whatever was open during the season. Anything that I could keep playing sports while baseball wasn't going on.
For sure. When did it turn for you when you went, okay, this is a game that I kind of enjoy too. Hey, maybe I can chase this thing and maybe I should try for something bigger?
So I'd say that was really going into high school. Like baseball was my best sport for probably most of my youth and growing up, but it was really when I got to high school that it kind of separated myself, because I would be playing high school baseball and basketball and just realizing how much higher caliber of player I could be with baseball. And that definitely became the avenue to pursue more. And I liked it more. I've always loved baseball so much. I always enjoyed going to Reds games and baseball games. It's just been my favorite. Big baseball family.
Mm-hmm. Whose poster was up on the wall when you were growing up?
I was a big fan of Jose Bautista, as just about everybody from Toronto was in the early mid-2010s. And also Brandon Phillips on the Reds. I liked a lot of Reds players growing up in Cincinnati.
I was going to say, so that's kind of an interesting dynamic. You go from Ontario, your formative years are in Cincinnati. I was surprised that your first answer wasn't a Brandon Phillips or Joey Votto, that kind of thing. And here you are talking about Jose Bautista.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a very diehard Jays fan. My family moving down to the States was always very proud in their Canadian heritage and the Canadian stuff. So I was always raised as a Blue Jays Raptors fan through and through.
Very cool. So how do you end up in Edmonton from Cincinnati?
So, well, we moved all over the place for my dad's work, from Brampton to Cincinnati to Minnesota, and then finally just ended up in Edmonton. They're always just trying to get back to Canada, and you finally got a good position here. So here we are.
That's fantastic. Looking back on the young career to this point, aside from obviously a no-no is a pretty big deal, do you have a favorite memory or moment at the ballpark where you're just like, man, I can't believe we got to do this?
Oof, there are a lot of good ones. I would say the main one for me was probably when I got my first start with the Edmonton Riverhawks over the summer a couple of years ago. Because I just remember, like, everything was normal, my warm-up, my start day, everything. And then I got onto the mound and looked up into the stands and just saw 5,000 to 7,000 people sitting there cheering. And it was the most insane moment in my life. And I'll never forget that I was lucky enough to get to pitch in front of a crowd like that and have that experience.
Absolutely. On the flip side of that, we all know baseball is a game of failure. So give us that example of the one big hurdle or that thing that got in the way that you're so proud of yourself because you were able to overcome it.
Oh, well, that's an easy one. That'd be my elbow health. In my first year, my first off season in college, I had strained my medial epicondyle and triceps tendon really badly. And I've been dealing with elbow issues ever since, like even to now. And over this past off season, it is the first off season and first start to a season where I haven't been kept on a pitch count and I haven't been worried about my elbow getting re-injured. That's, I'd say, been by far the biggest hurdle, is dealing with health in that way.
I'm always curious when it comes to injuries like that, especially when it lingers and kicks around. How tough is it mentally? Like physically, it's one thing, but talk us through what maybe your go-to is to get yourself around the mental hurdles of like not being worried that something's going to go astray every start or every inning or every pitch.
Yeah, well, that was absolutely the hardest part. And the big thing for me was trying to focus my mindset less on what could happen when I make this next pitch, what I could do to potentially re-injure myself. And I just try to really think more about preparation, and that I know that I've done everything in my power, that if I have proper mechanics and I go through my routines and I do everything right, that I'm not going to have that arm pain. And it's just being able to trust in that day in, day out, and being able to put that worry on the back burner.
Well, it certainly worked out for you, at least in the early going here, and frankly, through your whole EC career to this point, because you've put up some amazing numbers over the last few years here. What's that program meant to you? Looking back on it now, what are your fourth year now? So you've had a chance to really kind of grow up in a program that's growing up on its own as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It is unbelievable to watch how much the program has gone year by year. You know, we had 21 guys on the roster our first year to now having a full 60-man varsity JV roster. It's wild to watch. The program has been amazing. They've given me so many opportunities. Like just being able to play for the Riverhawks, I'd never thought that I'd be able to do something like that. And that was only because of Edmonton Collegiate and the facilities. The facilities are unbelievable. We are so lucky to have a full Triple-A stadium, and it was an amazing grandstand, super nice turf. It's been a pleasure to be there.
What's Jake Lanferman mean to you? Because here's a guy who he's not your standard coach, right? Like you think about the Hubkas at PBA, you think about Ray Chadwick at TRU as a couple of examples. Like they're the old school, and here's Jake, barely out of college, who's been doing some pretty cool things on the coaching side now.
Oh yeah, he's very much a player's coach. Very much trying to figure out new things, trying a lot of new stuff that he sees in terms of drills and philosophies and whatnot. And it's never like I have my way, you guys need to do it exactly like this or else I'm not going to coach you. He's very much individualized to each player. And yeah, I'm a big fan of him.
Fantastic stuff. A couple of fun ones here before we let you go here, Matt. First off, when you're at the ballpark, maybe it's in Cincinnati, for example, what's your go-to food?
Ooh, hot dogs. They always had dollar hot dog night at the Red Stadium, so I'd go there, eat as many hot dogs as possible. $5-10, great time.
Now, the biggest question out of all of that is mustard or ketchup?
Oof, both. But if I really had to choose the one, it's mustard. Mustard for a hot dog all day.
I give you a long distance high five for that because not very many people say both, and I am a both guy. So yeah, let's have at her. It's a very divisive discussion that we have here on the show, apparently, and I had no idea. What is the coolest ballpark you've ever pitched in?
Ooh, well, that is a very good question. Okay, I'd say that 2 years ago, we had a spring trip down to Arizona, and we got to play games at the Kansas City Royals minor league spring training field.
Oh, cool!
And yeah, that was amazing. It was just the nicest field that I've ever seen. It was cool to get to play where these minor and major league guys were.
For sure. When you're on a long trip, say, to TRU as an example, what's usually playing? Are you a video or are you a show binger or a music binger? Or what do you usually got in the earbuds?
Earbuds, I'm a big music guy, a lot of music, and I play cards. Those are the main two things to get through those bus rides.
Fantastic. And speaking of music, let's say you're the closer and you get the Timmy Trumpet protocol, or maybe you get the Enter Sandman. What's your go-to closer tune that you'd walk out to if you had all the lights and everything going for you? All
right. If I were a closer, that's a good closer song. Okay, something to fire up. I would say the song Them Bones by Alice in Chains.
Whoa, off the rails, and I'm all about the Alice in Chains, so kudos, my friend. I'm another long-distance high five. I'm a big fan. Couple of final ones for you. They're the ones we that we ask across the board here on the show. For those young athletes who are just starting out on their journeys, or maybe maybe they're the rookies who are showing up at EC, and they're looking to you for that advice, those words of wisdom to get to where you're at now. What do you want to impart upon them?
I would say my biggest tip is you need to learn to enjoy your life outside of baseball and have a life outside of baseball, because if you get into this cycle of that's the only thing that matters to you and like this is everything to me, then anytime you do fail or something doesn't go your way, it's a lot harder to overcome, and it's a lot more it beats you down a lot more than if you can know that, hey, the second I leave the baseball field, I can go relax. I can enjoy my life. I think that's very important with how much that we play.
They talk about work-life balance all the time, right? So there's a prime example of that. So I love that. And the final one, Matt, that we ask everybody here on the show, what's the game of baseball mean to you?
Oof, the game of baseball means a lot to me. It's driven me as a person. It's made me competitive in the way that I am, which I'm sure shows in pretty much everything I do in life. It's been something to help structure my time. I feel like baseball it's always been there, and it's always been part of my schedule, and it's done a really great job teaching me how to balance things that I need to do with baseball and things that I love to do like that.
We've loved having the opportunity to get to know your journey and talk a little bit about the most recent outing, and hopefully you have a few more still to come here, Matt. Congrats on the no-no. Congrats on all the success you've had at this point. Continued success at EC and beyond. And again, thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
We head now to the minor leagues, and one guy you won't see on the field, but we'll hear plenty of during the season if you watch enough minor league baseball, is Alex Jensen. He's been named one of the voices for the Triple-A Worcester Red Sox after spending last season in Double-A with the Springfield Cardinals and a few seasons before that in the Athletics farm system. He's originally from Oakland, and when he was in college was one of the pitchers of the championship-winning Okotoks Dawgs between 2007 and 2009. Interestingly enough, he got his start in the broadcast booth as a color guy on his off days with friend of the show John Hodgson, and did a few games of play-by-play himself when Baseball Canada played the U.S. and Chinese Taipei in a Super Series in Okotoks. That led to his future broadcasting career, including an opportunity to call a few games at the MLB level with his hometown A's in 2021. We talked about that, his days at Siemens Stadium, coaching Matt Lloyd and Jordan Procession, among others, and so much more in this wonderful conversation.
Alex, thanks so much for joining us here on the show. Yeah, thank you, Joe. It's good to see you. It's always good to be a part of the Alberta baseball circle, and I really enjoyed my time in Okotoks. So I appreciate you reaching out.
Absolutely. We'll get to that in a minute, but let's talk about the here and now first off. Congrats on the new gig with the Sox. How excited are you to get the Triple-A season going this time around?
Yeah, man, I'm really excited. We moved out to New England, my wife and I, for her job actually, and I was very lucky that Worcester had some innings for me to pick up, and had a spot on the broadcast team for me to join. So, but very, very, very excited. It's my first time living year round in a cold weather climate where there's actually a winter. I know we're expecting maybe some snow next weekend, but the sun's out today and it's starting to feel like baseball. So I'm ready to get going.
Talk about get going, and obviously spring training is almost behind us now. Opening day is right here now. Talk about the learning curve heading into a new year, new organization, new level. Walk us through what your prep has been like over the last few months here as you've gotten ready for the new gig.
I think that a lot of the best prep kind of comes organically. Getting to know people in the organization face to face, it kind of happens over a few weeks. But going into the season, I think for me anyway, I want to have as much background as I can on the guys who are going to be on the roster. So, what their history's been like climbing up the chain, draft history, injury history, trying to find little nuggets from quotes, that they've had during spring training. The higher up in the organizational ladders you get, the more access you have to that type of information. So, lucky to be in the Red Sox system right now where Boston has one of the best systems, especially in the upper levels of the minors in all of baseball, with their big three, especially. And it sounds like, two of them will be in Worcester. So, I'll give you an example. I was reading about Marcelo Meyer this morning, and the Red Sox playing down in Mexico, and both his parents were born in Mexico, and he was just talking about how much he'd love to represent Mexico in the World Baseball Classic next year. And just having little nuggets like that where you can kind of reflect on some of those things during the first couple of weeks of the season, at least for the innings that I'll have. I really think that the best stuff comes organically. It's being in the clubhouse every day, being in at BP, and just kind of shooting the breeze. And maybe you don't use something that that you learned that day or even that week, but later on down the road, that conversation may shed some light on hey, why is X pitcher having so much success with his sweeper or his slider? What kind of adjustments has he made to his grip? So I think a lot of the best stuff comes organically, but certainly trying to drill down on every individual guy and kind of their arc throughout the minor leagues, and how they've gotten to where they are right now. And the cool thing about Triple-A is, there's so many guys who have played in the big leagues for, as up to a handful of years. I mean, I think I read that Matt Moore is going to be on the Worcester roster, and he's a multi-year big league veteran. So. I think there's a different rhyme or reason. Everyone has their own way of doing it, but that's kind of how I've settled on it. And then I just believe as the year goes on, all that stuff becomes, a lot more intricate with, the relationships that you develop. And that really helps give you more background.
What's the buzz around the organization this year? You mentioned the big three, but there's a lot of pieces that are right on the cusp of being on a very good big league team, let alone a very good Worcester team.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement, rightfully so, about the Red Sox in Boston this year with the addition of Alex Bregman and Garrett Crochet. I think a lot of people think that this could be a playoff team this season, and with the graduation of the big three, along with a few other guys who can help kind of fill out that list. I left my notebook in the other room, but there are several pitching prospects. Richard Fitz looks like he may open the season with the big team. He was acquired from Pittsburgh a year ago. Hunter Dobbins is another guy on the mound who I know they think very highly of. There are so many of those guys, like you mentioned, that are that may not, have the pedigree of a Christian Campbell, a Roman Anthony, a Marcelo Meyer that are going to help the Sox during the course of the season. I mean, Matt Moore's another one, a non-roster invitee. Sean Newcomb, a left-handed pitcher who has major league experience. I'm sure he'll help Boston at some point during the season. So, but there is a lot of excitement, I think, around here, especially after the addition of Alex Bregman, that this could be a playoff team this season after finishing exactly 500 a year ago. The defense was a big talking point, and I think that Bregman will help shore up the infield defense. And then you've got Gold Glove candidates in both center and right field, along with Jaron Duran, who was the MVP of the All-Star game a year ago, over in left. So, it's a season of attrition. There will be changes. There will be injuries. There's no doubt about that. But I think that the Sox are in a good position to fill those spots in the roster with either the blue chip prospects or, the guys that can hold it down for 2 or 3 weeks, until the everyday guy returns to the lineup. So I really think the organization's in a good place for right now and going forward.
Your year here with the Sox coming up comes after a year in Springfield with the Cardinals. Quite the year for that team. Take us back to last year, and do you have any favorite memories or moments on the field or off with that organization?
Yeah, it was awesome. There were several firsts. First of all, it was the 20th year of Cardinals baseball in Springfield, which was really cool to be a part of. And everyone knows what Cardinals Nation means in the baseball world, and being 3 hours from St. Louis, you really got a taste of that. The Springfield uniforms or the birds on the bat, it's the whole 9 yards. But the season started with the franchise record winning streak, 9 straight wins, which again, a franchise record never been done before in Springfield Cardinals history. They won the first half and were looking for their first Texas League title since 2012. Unfortunately, came up short in the first round of the playoffs against the Arkansas Travelers, who are the AA affiliate of the Seattle Mariners. But it was so much fun to experience a different part of the country, a different fan base. There are very few places that I would have left Springfield for. This happens to be one of them, and family moves obviously come along with that. Life takes you in a different direction sometimes. But yeah, also getting to, and I'm sure you'll touch on this, but getting to reacquaint myself with several people who have Okotoks ties as well. Matt Lloyd was on our team, and it was I coached him when he was 14 years old, in bantam with the Okotoks Dawgs. But it was a ton of fun. We had a lot of top prospects in the Cardinals organization, some really good arms who I think we'll see in St. Louis either this year or next year. Tink Hence, Quinn Matthews, the lefty from Stanford, a catcher named Jimmy Crooks, who is the Texas League MVP, who should be in St. Louis again sooner rather than later. But yeah, longest winning streak in franchise history. The first no-hitter in Springfield Cardinals history happened in Corpus Christi at the end of the first half. That was a lot of fun to call. And then a first half title. Unfortunately with the A's, all 3 of my years in Stockton were under 500 clubs. So it was fun to be part of a club that was winning some games and playing postseason baseball. And for anybody that ever visits the Ozarks or Southwest Missouri during the summer, I highly encourage you to get out to Hammons Field and check out a Springfield Cardinals game, and then make the drive to St. Louis, because going to a Cardinals game in St. Louis is on the baseball fan bucket list, in my opinion. It's just, it's one of the best baseball brands we have in the sport, and their fans are as passionate as any. But would not trade my year in Springfield for anything. I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic stuff. I'm glad you mentioned Matt Lloyd. Quite the comeback after a year of injury. He almost quit the game altogether, goes to Baseball Canada, Mexico, and then lands in St. Louis and with the Springfield Cardinals. Walk us through what it was like seeing this kid that, as you mentioned, you knew him as a teenager and go through the trials and tribulations of professional baseball and not just, get back on his feet, but get on his feet in a really big way.
Really big way, man. He had a great year. I was so happy for him. Like you said, the journey that he went through to get to that point, and talking to his dad, his dad Steve, who I built a relationship with when I was coaching Matt in Okotoks as well. And when it was announced that I was going to be in Springfield, a couple days later, I got a text from Steve saying that Matt was going to be in Springfield as well. That he had signed with the Cardinals. He was going to be in Springfield, and he really felt like the Cardinals were a good fit for him as an organization. But yeah, what a small world, and just being able to watch him get comfortable, and like you mentioned, after all the injuries, had a great college career, of course, in Indiana and Iowa Western as a two-way guy, and just never really was able to get healthy in the Reds organization. Then, of course, the pandemic played a part in that as well. But to see him healthy and in an organization that kind of values the things that he brought to the table, the quality of at bat that he had, the pop that he displayed, and he got a chance to play a bunch of different positions: first base, left field, third base, a couple of games, and of course, in the lineup as a DH. But I think he really established himself as somebody to watch in the Cardinals organization, a guy that I think they value what he brings to the table. Again, the power, the quality of his at bats, his plate appearances, and I just felt like he was a good teammate along with everybody else on that Springfield club. I felt like they were, there was a good chemistry in the clubhouse. But it was just a ton of fun to see him reestablish himself as a guy that has a chance. I mean, he's breaking camp with the Memphis Redbirds, Triple-A with St. Louis. He's got a chance to get there. And it was, to watch him do that up close and in person and go through the day-to-day grind, watch him go through the day-to-day grind and just kind of pick his brain around the cage or whatever. A ton of fun. And just like you said, I mean, we go back so long. It's been fun to follow his career from afar, and then getting to see him in probably the most pivotal year he's had in his baseball career, and to see him succeed the way he did was really cool.
Another guy that you managed to reconnect with in the league, albeit on a different team and in a new role as well, Jordan Procession. Talk about being able to connect with him again and maybe share some old stories about the Dogs years and also about life. I mean, he's a new dad over the last few years here as well, so he's gotten a chance to live life too.
Yeah, building a house in Tulsa too. Really proud of him. I know he's switched organizations with the Diamondbacks now. But he was a guy that when the academy was really first getting going in Okotoks, and Brett Thomas was down there, who's still one of my best friends, was out in Okotoks coaching. He was one of the first guys that came through when the academy was in Okotoks that really had a bright future, and obviously ended up playing in college and going on to have a nice professional career for a handful of years. But it was great to see him. I know he loves what he's doing. He loves the game. And I'm really excited for him in his new role. The Dodgers are from everything he told me, were such a cool organization to be a part of, because they really invest in the minor leagues, and it's apparent everywhere you go. I remember in the Cal League in Low A, they would have a chef, travel with their team and set up like a little van or a food truck outside the clubhouse to make food for the guys. The Dodgers really invest in their player development, and for Pro to be a valued part of that, I know he really cherished it. And then getting to take the next step now, and get to be on the coaching staff with the Diamondbacks at Double-A is going to be really exciting for him. But just getting to see both those guys that I, obviously had lost touch with day to day for a good decade, and then kind of pick up right where things left off was a lot of fun to see them kind of grow. Like you mentioned, Pro's a new dad, and they're building a house, and Matt Lloyd I think he's really starting to gain some steam with his career. Just seeing the men that they've turned into is really cool, because I was there for part of their development with the Dogs, and the baseball world is such a small and close-knit community. So to experience that in a different part of the world for all of us was a really cool thing.
Absolutely. Let's get into the Dogs bit a little bit from your experience there, because you're originally from Oakland, yet you find yourself in probably a place that you wouldn't have been able to point out on a map prior to actually getting on a plane and flying up to Calgary. In 2007, do you remember that moment when you stepped foot here and went, okay, I guess we're going to do this?
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It was kind of sight unseen to a certain extent. What happened was Brett Thomas and I were teammates in junior college, and he was playing at Cal. I was playing at St. Mary's, which are very close together, by the way, only about 10 miles or 20 kilometers apart. And he messaged me, during the fall and said, "Hey, what are you doing this summer? My coach is sending me to Okotoks to play for this team in a Canadian college league. I know they're looking for pitchers. You should reach out to them." So I checked with my coach to make sure it was okay. He said yes, and I just remember looking at the website and all the renderings of Seaman Stadium, and just thinking about how cool that could be. I love baseball. I wanted to play during the summer. So yeah, I remember my dad and I flew to Spokane and rented a car and drove up through BC into Alberta. And getting there, I got there for media day, and I remember they were still sodding the berm and there was no, there was no training facility at this time. It was in the plans, but it hadn't been built yet. So when I got there, they were still putting seats in. They were still sodding the berm. The opening day was like 3 days away. We were going to Medicine Hat for a couple games. But you could see the bones of the place. And then, God, what it turned into during that first year in 2007 was unbelievable. Like, I don't think any of us could have seen that coming. The way the community embraced us, and winning a championship at home that year was just kind of like the icing on the cake. I still think to this day it's one of the best decisions I made going to Okotoks, because it's not just the parts of it that are on the field, it's away from the field. Jim and Wendy Amy were our billets, and we got close with them and their kids, and you get close with all your teammates. I'm still friends with several of the guys that I played with to this day. Matt Dufour and Jake Batari, Manny Kumar. When I was lucky enough to be in Toronto actually with the A's last year or 2 years ago, Manny and I connected. Went out for a bite to eat, and he brought his wife and kids to one. I was able to get tickets for his wife and kids to one of the games at the Rogers Center, and to connect with them after the game. So looking back, it was really cool to be a part of the first team that was in Okotoks, and to do everything we did. But really, it's all the relationships that have lasted this long that is the best part of it. So yeah, looking back, it's just funny to see where it was then and what it's turned into now, and kind of watching the evolution of it as the years have gone along. I wouldn't trade my 3 years in Okotoks as a player for anything, or my 1 year as a coach. But yeah, I'll never forget that first day. Still signage was still going up. There were like little cranes around the ballpark, but John Urcandia, we all know John Urcandia. Come hell or high water, that thing was ready for opening day, man. And they packed the place, and again, just winning a championship that first year was like the icing on the cake.
Not just the first year either. You managed to do it 2 more times before the time was up. I mean, talk about the run that team went on those 3 years, and what made that three-peat so special in your eyes.
Yeah, there were 7 of us I think it was 7 that stuck around for all 3 years. You just don't see that in collegiate, summer leagues, guys coming back for another year. I think it just underscores what the community aspect was, because you're not going back just to play baseball. You're going back there to live there and be a part of the community for 3 or 4 months. So yeah, I think I think that was the most special part, was becoming a part of the community, and getting to see people at the grocery store, or walking around the neighborhood in the morning, and really just 1,000 miles away from home, and all of us were from different places. You think about Jeff Duda, who's from BC, who's still with the Dogs to this day. Few of us from California, Nevada, Ontario. But I think the fact what made it, or I think what showed how special the entire operation was that guys came back, and guys wanted to come back even after. It's easy to say that in August after the last game, but to still feel that way come December and March and April. I can't wait to get back to Okotoks. I think that really kind of paints a picture of what it meant to all of us. And I think that everybody who played in those first few years kind of has a little bit of an ownership over what the Dogs have ultimately become. I mean, it's amazing looking on social media and seeing all the additions they made to the ballpark. The little patio down the left field line, like they've extended the seating down the first base line. I know they're building a new weight room. So just to kind of be a part of that initial group. Again, I think it just kind of gives us some ownership, and doing it 3 years in a row, like it was crazy. And especially the first 2 years at home, I know as a pitching staff, like we felt a lot of pride in what we were able to do, especially that second year in 2008. And I mean, Jeff Duda and Jake Botari were like as dominant as Mark Hardy, Mark Wilson. I mean, as dominant of a starting rotation as there was in the league, and maybe in the league's history. I like to think so anyway. So no, I always have great memories of it. And like I said, I think all of us kind of have a little piece of like feeling like we kind of, and I think every player that came through Okotoks does, but being there those first few years, it really, it's hard to put into words, but I think we all feel like, we saw the thing grow from the ground up, obviously, and feel a little bit of ownership, for lack of a better term, for, how they've continued to succeed.
Definite connection there, and not just from a ball playing perspective, but it also ended helping you land what turned out to be your calling at the end of the day. Tell us about the first broadcast booth experience that you had here in Okotoks.
Well, luckily, I think the Dogs were forward thinking in this way, where John Hodgson wanted to broadcast, and they part of the ballpark was building in a broadcast booth, a couple of broadcast booths in the press box up there, not just like a scoreboard operation, but 2 dedicated broadcast booths. I mean, this was 2008, I think, when Johnny first started broadcasting the games, maybe 2009. But I always knew it was something I wanted to do. Going back to when I was a little kid, if playing ball didn't work out, I always knew that I had an interest in it. And I think it was 2008, when we had the national teams come out to Okotoks, Team USA, Team Canada, and the Chinese Taipei. And for one of the games that we weren't playing in, John let Brett and I call the game, which was awesome. So doing that, and then doing our post game chats with Johnny, that was my first introduction into broadcasting. And again, I knew I wanted to do it. So when I got back home, I started doing games at St. Mary's, baseball, basketball, volleyball, whatever they had for me to do. But yeah, that was my first experience. And again, it's a tip of the cap to John Arcandia, Johnny Hodgson, for being forward thinking enough to think, hey, we should be broadcasting these games, and but very, very lucky to have that be my first experience. And I'll never forget that game I did with Brett. It was the first time I did baseball, like play by play for 9 innings, and I loved it. So that was the first. It's very addicting, So that was the first time I actually got to put a headset on and do a game, was at Siemens Stadium, Chinese Taipei versus Canada. I think Brett Lowry was playing for Team Canada at that time. That's how old I am. No, it was. Again, I think it just kind of it underscores how forward thinking the Dogs have been. Since their inception, especially since moving to Okotoks. I mean, that was kind of the start of it, moving out of Calgary down to Okotoks. But things like that, and that series they had there, inviting teams like the Corvallis Knights to come play, and again, what has turned into now, it's like the gold standard for college summer league baseball.
Could 2008 Alex Jensen have ever imagined that 2021 Alex Jensen would be back in his hometown at the Coliseum calling a game between his hometown A's and the Seattle Mariners?
I think he always hoped it. I mean, he always hoped it would happen. But no, I mean, I didn't even know how to get started, really, at that point. And still at various points, because I wasn't always in broadcasting. Like, I did St. Mary's basketball on the side, and I had a corporate job, and I thought that was just going to be kind of it, So the short answer is no. Like, I mean, for the amount of position. I was able to be in the right place at the right time. You just can't foresee that stuff. I mean, I'm going to games with my dad and both my parents we grew up going to the Coliseum, like you said. And, I'd always kind of turn around and look at the booth and think, what if, but, not in my wildest dreams that I think that I'd actually get to do it and do it a number of times, and hopefully, there's more to come in the future, but I just feel so lucky to have been put in the positions that I've been in, and very thankful to the A's for giving me the opportunity to do that, and thankful to all the organizations that I've gotten to work for. But yeah, no, I mean, the short answer is no. I think we all have dreams of playing, and once that ends, and it ends for everybody, we have dreams of other things. And I was lucky enough to kind of grind my way there and make good relationships. But when I was 16 years old, no shot. If you'd have told me that, I would have said no way.
So how surreal, or maybe I guess the question becomes, what were the Goosies like when you stroll up to the stadium on May 24th going, okay, I'm going to call this game here at this place that was sort of my mecca of baseball as a kid growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't sleep a wink the night before, not at all. So I tried to get there really early, but I mean, the other part of that is like, okay, you do all that, you get to the stadium, and then you still have to go into a big league clubhouse, which is can be an intimidating place to be a little bit, and be on the field. I was just trying to soak it in, and feel as normal as possible. Yeah, the blood was flowing. There's no doubt about that. But once the game started, it's kind of like just riding a bike. You're still calling a slider just off the outside corner. You're still describing a ground ball to second base, and how many. It kind of becomes instinctual once you kind of get into the flow of the game. But yeah, the heart was beating pretty hard before given the starting lineups and walking up to the stadium. But I'll never forget walking up to the stadium. I walked that walk through that parking lot hundreds of times before as a fan, and working on the A's radio broadcast after that as like a stats guy. But today you're going to be calling a Major League Baseball game. Like you don't forget that. So it was very nervous, very little sleep, a lot of caffeine. But again, once the game started going, and once I got to the flow of my innings, it was kind of like I said, it was just instincts kind of took over.
Did you take away any mementos or memorabilia from that first game, just to or do you do that along your trek? Because I got to take a few things so you can put it in the trophy case of the mantle, so that one day you can look back on and go, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, what's funny is at the time, my now wife was living in Kansas City. It was right after the pandemic, and she works in sports too. So she had long story short, she moved to Kansas City to take a job for 9 months and ended up moving back to the Bay Area. But her and a couple of her friends, and a couple of our friends, came to the game and sat in the second deck. And during the first or second inning, they caught a foul ball.
No way.
So I have that foul ball right here. It's actually sitting on this desk. So that was for my first game. Yeah, first or second inning, foul ball got hit right. It was crazy how that happened. I got to kind of look down out of the booth because I knew where they were sitting, and so I looked down out of the booth and they were waving the ball at me, and it was kind of crazy actually. But a few other things, like I was lucky enough to go on a bunch of road trips with the A's, and one of them happened to be here in Boston, so I got to go inside the Green Monster and sign my name. But other than that, no, not many mementos. But this one's pretty cool. I mean, having a foul ball hit to my friends and family that were at the game, and for them to catch it. The first Major League game I was doing was pretty darn cool. And then obviously walking inside the Green Monster was like, it's every baseball fan's dream to do something like that.
100%. How driven does that little taste of the MLB make you to want to become the voice for an MLB team in the not too distant future? Oh,
yeah. 100%. I mean, it really fuels the fire because you get a taste of it. You get to see what it's like, and the effects on several different parts of your life. The travel, the resources you have to get ready for a game, the financials, to be quite honest with you, right? When you're climbing through the minor leagues, just like a player, you're not making a whole lot of money. So yeah, I mean, it really helps kind of rev the engine, and I feel really lucky because there's so few. I mean, there's so many great announcers who are in the minor leagues that haven't gotten their opportunity yet. But once you get a taste of it, I think it's just like for a player, you hear all the stories, but once you see it for yourself, it really, I mean, the fire's already lit because, we're all in minor leagues to get to the major leagues at one point or another. That's our dream. Whether you're a player, announcer, a trainer, a coach, a manager, I think, 99% of people want to get to the major leagues. Once you get a little taste of it and kind of understand what day-to-day life is like, the travel, the hotels, the meals, all that stuff. And then the best part is the game, because the game means more than at the major league level than anywhere else. And you get to see the best players in the world. And, it really revs the engine. Because like I said, I mean, that's why most people are in this business, to get there. So yeah, I mean, whatever it was before, you double, triple, quadruple that feeling, wanting to experience that every single day. But at the end of the day too, I feel very lucky to do what I do. I feel very lucky to go to a baseball game every day. And I don't take that for granted because I've been in a position where that hasn't been my life. And to have that perspective, I think for me helps me appreciate showing up to the ballpark for work. And I feel extremely lucky to do that, whatever level it's at. And it's something I'll never take for granted. I'm lucky enough to have had a little taste of the highest level, and I hope, it's not the last one, but it doesn't mean I don't feel lucky to be doing what I do every day at the level that I'm at right now. And the old saying, be where your feet are. There's no better way to live your life. And I try my best to live that way every day. I feel really lucky to do what I do. So there was a time in my life when I wasn't doing it, and I wanted to, and I just feel lucky to be where I am.
Couple more for you before we let you go, Alex. First off, looking back on the young broadcasting career to this point, do you have a favorite memory or a moment or a call that stands out in your eyes? It was just like, man, that was pretty cool that I got to do that.
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, doing a game at Fenway Park was that's pretty cool. Just all the history and just getting to be there, not just to watch a game, but to call a game. I mean, that in general is pretty cool. Man, in terms of moments, I mean, the Cardinals gave me a bunch last year, a bunch of franchise firsts. So the longest winning streak, my first 9 games with the club was kind of crazy. The first no-hitter in Springfield history was pretty awesome. Getting to call playoff baseball was phenomenal. Actually, Matt Lloyd provided a great moment last year, where it's the deciding game 3 of the division series. We'd end up losing, but we fell behind 8-2 or something like that. We fell behind by quite a bit. I can't remember the exact score, but we came all the way back, and Matt Lloyd hit a 3-run homer. I think it was to tie it in like the 7th inning, 8th inning, and everyone's going crazy. And that was a really special moment, especially personally, to see it happen to someone I've known for over a decade. But I think that moment was really cool for me, just because of what it meant doing playoff baseball for the first time, even though it wasn't, in the major leagues. Having that moment was really cool, because that swing really meant something to the club, not just individually, but to everybody in that clubhouse. It really signified a significant happening, coming back from that deficit in the playoffs, and with those games meaning so much. So off the top of my head, that was a moment that last year really, really stood out as a special one. But there were so many. I mean, we had a guy, Chandler Redmond, who set the new Springfield record for home runs. He did that at home, and that was a cool moment to call. I'd say out of everything, that one stands. I'm sure if I thought of more, or if I thought for a little bit longer, more would come to the forefront. But that's one of them that stands out for me for sure.
Absolutely. And the final question I have for you, Alex, is one we ask everybody here on the show. What's the game of baseball mean to you?
Oh man, what doesn't it mean? I've been into baseball since I was 2 years old, and so many moments, with my dad in the front yard, and not just going to games, but him, and both my parents, my whole family, taking time out of their lives to feed this passion that I had. So it's it's so much more than just a game to me. It's a big part of who I am, and it's so many great memories with family and people I love have come around the game. So that's what it means to me. The friendships, the bonds that I've made, through baseball, and most of all, kind of thinking back to when I was young and how my parents, my dad taught me to love the game, and so many great memories surrounding baseball. Like I still have a memory of when I caught a ball, like not basket style for the first time. I was like 4 years old, and I'll have that memory for the rest of my life. And that, I remember my dad hitting ground balls to me in the front yard, or when I was in high school, taking me to hit at the local high school. So just so many of my favorite memories with friends and family come because of baseball. And so I think that's why I love it so much. And I feel really fortunate to have had the game be a big part of my life, and have made so many great memories and friends surrounding it. So I think when push comes to shove, that's what baseball means to me.
Been fantastic getting a chance to hear a little bit about your journey, as well as talking about the switch over from playing days in Okotoks to now being in the broadcast booth and making your way up in the baseball broadcasting world. Alex, really appreciate the time. Congrats on the new gig. Congrats on all the success to this point. Continued success with the Red Sox organization and beyond. And again, thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
No, thank you so much, Joe. And if I may, because I know this is an Alberta baseball audience, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Okotoks community, to John Arcandia and the Amy family, and everybody involved with the Okotoks Dawgs for making that part of my baseball journey really, really special, and one that I'll never forget. Okotoks and the Dawgs will always, hold a special place in my heart. So I really appreciate you reaching out, Joe. It was great to connect with you again, man. And I hope to be back in Southern Alberta at some point soon.
Thanks again to Matthew Ridsdale and Alex Jensen for joining us this week, and thanks to all of you for downloading and listening. If you like this or any other episode, make sure to leave us a rating and review on your app to help spread the word about ADS. A tip of the cap, as always, to our Platinum supporters, Under the Lights Sports and Entertainment, the Western Canadian Baseball League, and the Okotoks Dawgs for their incredible generosity, which helps us cover costs like web hosting fees, online newspaper subscriptions, travel, and much more. For more on our tremendous teammates, or to join our roster of sponsors, head to albertadugoutstories.com/supporters. Until next time, thank you for all of your support online, on social, and on air of Alberta Dugout Stories.